I'm going to pass it over to our moderator for this, Sarah Ryan from Big Valley Rancheria. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to sit because I had a slight injury to my leg the other week, and so I'm still recovering, can't really stand up too much. So welcome, everybody, to the HAB session. I know you've all been waiting for this one because it's the most interesting and most important. Just kidding. It's been wonderful to hear from everybody, and I've learned a lot today myself and look forward to tomorrow. Thank you, Lake County and Angela and Dr. Pfeiffer for putting all this work into it, and all of your team. It's been a great event so far. I have a panel of folks up here that have agreed to speak about HABs, harmful algal blooms, and I just want you to know that we have some health stuff that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about how the data that's out there about harmful algal blooms. We've been learning about why it's happening. We're going to learn more about that in this session, but also about some of the health aspects. So we would like everybody to hold their questions until we're all done, as we're all sitting up here, because there is like a 15-minute or so panel of question and answers after. So if you could just hold your questions, and then we'll try to take it as a group, or if you can direct it to a single person if you'd like to. So as I said, my name is Sarah Ryan. I'm the environmental director for the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians. And I've been fortunate enough to work with them and for them for 23 years. And being one of the tribes on the largest, on the shoreline of the largest natural freshwater lake in California, a number of years ago, about 10 years ago, we decided, along with Elam Indian Colony, to start the cyanotoxin monitoring program on Clear Lake. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Just want to point out, we have what you're seeing here is a Thule boat that was built by some of our tribal members. We have an annual Thule Boat Festival every year and have an absolutely wonderful time. But as you can imagine, if you're going to be in the lake and do all of these activities, you need the water quality to be good. It's not like, Native Americans are just going to go to Highland Springs to do a cultural activity if they're normally used to doing it on the shoreline. It's really important to be tied to the land. That's what it's all about. And actually, in several years ago, and I'm trying to move that screen. The multiple tribes worked on Clean Water Act definitions for California to define tribal tradition and cultural uses of water, and also tribal subsistence fishing. Believe it or not, these definitions did not exist in California, except for Region 1, which is the northern part of California. It also includes some of the coast, and these definitions have been partially used. But as you can imagine, if you don't have definitions for it that everyone's agreed to, how do you actually set standards for it to be able to protect those uses? And the reason why we have a big program at Big Valley for water quality monitoring is because we are looking at protecting these uses. So what's on the screen here, hopefully you can see it a little bit, is a conceptual pathway that we created at Big Valley EPA, showing the different routes of exposure. If you're looking at a freshwater harmful algal bloom event, or really any type of contamination, what are the different ways through traditional activities that Native Americans come into contact with a contaminant such as a cyanotoxin? Well, we know that through ingestion or consumption, inhalation, and also dermal exposure through a variety of activities that have to do with education of the youth, cultural activities, just regular recreation, just things that Native Americans are doing on a regular basis as part of their culture, as part of their heritage, something that they're not going to change. I like to think of it like, most of us, we go celebrate Thanksgiving. It's usually Thursday, it's usually November. You kind of get together with your family. The water's bad, or something's wrong. We're going to do it in May, with our enemies. It's like you have a certain way of doing activities. And so tribal cultural activities have a place and a time and very specific things associated with it. And so that's why we do the work that we do, is because we want to make sure that information is front and center. So the program for cyanotoxin monitoring of Clear Lake, which is the largest natural freshwater lake in California, began in 2014, as I mentioned, with the two shoreline tribes, trust land tribes. That's Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians and Elam Indian Colony. There's some information on Big Valley's website about how it started, and it's grown over the years. And the reason why we've grown it is because we know that cyanobacteria can produce cyanotoxins. And this list is an example of information that's out there on the state's website about the different genera or each genus of cyanobacteria, and the types of toxins it can produce: liver toxins, neurotoxins, and skin toxins. So in our program, we're actually testing for the toxins based on the cyanobacteria that we're seeing in the water samples, because we do microscopy at the office. And, I mentioned the routes of exposure with tribal traditional activities. There is information that goes out from the state and from local governments to ERs, emergency rooms, physicians, clinics, and also veterinarians about the different symptoms that are part of cyanotoxin exposure and the different what it takes to be exposed to it. And this is just a small graphic here. But the most common cyanotoxin we have in Clear Lake is a liver toxin. And that's not something that you get it on your skin and you start to have a liver toxin reaction. It's actually something you have to ingest. There's also exposure through inhalation. It's not really well known at this point whether that is also, would have health impacts. So back in 2012, the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, and this is all part of why we developed our program for Clear Lake, the state set some limits that were based on health levels and anything above those levels you want to avoid, or otherwise it will have health impacts. So you can see from the chart that human recreational uses for microcystins, and that's a toxin we see most often in Clear Lake, that we want to avoid anything higher than 0.8 micrograms per liter, because after that, because of an accidental ingestion of water, there's going to be potentially health impacts. They also thankfully analyze things like dog exposure, cattle exposure. Cattle are, wandering Clear Lake all the time. I see them even near our marina, like big hippopotamuses, going through the water. And they can also be impacted by cyanotoxin consumption through eating the mats that are on the lake. So it was really important for us to know what those levels that have been set by toxicologists and include that in our program. Again, it's very much centered on which cyanobacteria is there. And that's because each one can produce different toxins. So I wanted to point out that the trigger level that was set by the OEHA study of 2012 has linked it to signage of caution, warning, and danger based on the toxin levels. I've pulled out just the microcystins toxin here, but there are other toxins, anatoxin, which has been found in Clear Lake. It is found in some other creeks. It's including Middle Creek very recently. But for microcystins, that is the most common cyanotoxin that we see here in Clear Lake. And again, if we want to avoid health impacts, then it needs to be below 0.8 micrograms per liter. I wanted to show you from our data what those levels look like over the last 10 years that we've been doing it. So I don't have the 2024 data on here yet, but you can see that we always exceed that 0.8, except for 1 year, 0.67, and it was in 2016. What happened in 2015 again? The Valley Fire. So the whole next year, the water quality was different. We only saw nitrogen-fixing cyanobacteria, and look at these toxin levels, incredibly low. That didn't follow the same method after the big Mendocino Complex fire, but it did happen. It was very interesting to see what happened right after the Valley Fire. But you can see that the lower arm of the lake tends to have the higher or the highest levels in our years. So in our years of monitoring. So, we're seeing trends, and people have talked about that today too, that, we see a lot more things in the Oaks and lower arm. So cyanobacteria has quite a number of impacts that also just have to do with the aesthetics of the water. People don't want to go swimming in it, and rightly so. But it can also impact when they start to die, when the cyanobacteria, which is a bacteria, starts to die. Then it depletes oxygen, just like the breaking down of any organic matter. And then that can lead to fish kills. We have a type of a genus of cyanobacteria that's kind of dominated this summer, which looks and smells like raw sewage. It also affects drinking water plants because they have to deal with mucilaginous sheaths that are part of this cyanobacteria genus. And so, there's a number of impacts besides the cyanotoxins that cyanobacteria can have. Wanted to show a picture of a combination of a microcystis and Lingvia bloom. This is what it looked like on the shoreline, and this is what it looked like under the microscope. This is microcystis that is the dark, it's a colony of cyanobacteria, and the Lingbia, which now is called Limnarephis, but that's the filaments that are here. So often what we see when we're seeing the lake is a combination of multiple cyanobacteria. And when we're looking at it under the microscope, we identify the dominant and secondary genus of cyanobacteria, and we've been tracking that for a number of years. And it really has told us a lot about the trends that we see, particularly because we're also marrying that with the water chemistry data that we're collecting, as well as the toxin analysis. So the program, as I said, began in 2014. There was not a regular program of cyanotoxin monitoring on the lake. I don't know if you all remember that, but I used to chair the Clear Lake Advisory Subcommittee for a certain amount of time, and we were asking, like, hey, can we have like a proactive program where we're testing on a regular basis, because there's been a dog death and, there's been other things, and it just didn't come to fruition. And so the tribes, have an ability to do set water quality standards and other things that the state can do. And so Big Valley and Elam decided to go ahead and start the monitoring program. And immediately we saw extremely high, danger levels of cyanotoxins in the Oak Swamp. And we used multiple sources of funding, and in particular, most of them were federal, but we have been using a little bit of state funds. So in 2014, we formed a task force because immediately we saw it was 10,000 micrograms per liter for one of the sites, and another site was almost 17,000. That was right near the drinking water intake of the Clear Lake Oaks. And so it's like, well, this is potentially a public health issue. We wanted to make sure that the health people were involved and other local decision makers, the other tribes. And we've just been expanding it. We started with 8 sites. We expanded to each year with a little bit more, started to do, just started adding to it. And as we did better at it, we added more to the point where, we also started monitoring toxins in the drinking water systems of the public water purveyors. That was something that Elam Indian Colony focused on. We got equipment to do phycocyanin and chlorophyll A monitoring, and then did fish and shellfish analysis for cyanotoxins to be able to get that information. And we're also doing benthic cyanobacteria monitoring and cyanotoxin monitoring in creeks. And then all the way to, we're doing some, as I said, the benthic cyanobacteria. We then started a program using an NIH grant with Tracking California to look at private drinking water systems. You might have heard about CalWatch. So there's, and Sydney's going to be talking about that in a minute, as well as some of the other drinking water things. And, really just looking at it as a holistic program of what's happening in the ecosystem here. A lot of people like to say, why are you monitoring so much? Why aren't you doing more? And it's like, well, we still have to have this information because the public has a right to, know what the toxin levels are. And we try to be very transparent about it. And partially because there's all these tribal uses that happen. There's subsistence consumption of fish. As I said, there's traditional activities. And I see a lot of people in the water. Not just the tribes. So here's our sampling locations. All of the interior sites were done by our partners who are already out there. You can see all these UA ones. Those were UC Davis's sites up until very recently. The county took over state sites for the CL, kind of the interior 3 sites. And the rest of the sites around the lake are the ones that we do in the summertime every other week. So we're out there every other week doing cyanotoxin and cyanobacteria and water chemistry monitoring. We've also done Blue Lakes, Highland Springs, Indian Valley Reservoir, Lake Pillsbury, getting some samples from our partners with that. And also from time to time, people say, hey, come and test our site, right here on our shoreline. If we've got time, we will do that too. And then communicating it. So this is one of the ways that we've communicated it. This is on our website. And, if remembering that caution, warning, danger is based on the toxin levels, you can see that. And I wanted to focus particularly just on summertime of 2021. You can see that basically from July to September, a lot of the sites had danger almost all of the time. And matter of fact, if you look at this last column, it's the percentage of sampling events at caution, warning, or danger. Some of these sites, Austin Park, Buckingham, what is that? Clear Lake Vista, Elam Indian Colony, a number of sites had 100% of the time as a caution, warning, and danger toxin levels. So that was something that this is a tracker that we use for signage, and we also communicate this information with public health officer, local government, and other partners that are involved. So, we're interested in looking at the trends because just because you see a cyanobacteria bloom doesn't mean that there's toxins there. So it's entirely possible. Matter of fact, we see certain genus or genera of cyanobacteria that don't ever seem to be producing toxins. So just because you're seeing blooms doesn't mean there's toxins there. And sometimes it'll look like clear water, but there are toxins. So it's really important to do toxin analysis. And so you can see in 2021, the most frequent toxin level in some of these locations, certainly all in the lower arm and and most in the Oaks arm, were at the danger level. And that's really concerning when there is a lot of different uses of Clear Lake, including for drinking water. So just to point out that, there are impacts on what's called beneficial uses, which is a Clean Water Act, and state also uses it. But the uses of the waters are protected through the Clean Water Act. And that means there's permits and TMDLs and cleanups and all sorts of things that get lumped into that. And so it's important to remember there is human exposure that is a lot, could look different from what sort of the general population is doing. We've got people out there who are harvesting fish and making tule boats, and something that looks really, kind of different from getting the water skis and going out to the center of the lake. They might be eating those tules, eating the fish straight from the lake, and just other things that have a slight different exposure rate. So human exposure is one of those routes of impacts for cyanotoxins. Also, drinking water, as mentioned earlier, here's general locations of the public water systems. There's 17 of them on Clear Lake, and they serve about 60% of Lake County residents. There's a health standard. It's not a drinking water standard at this point, but a health level that US EPA set a number of years ago, which there's been some monitoring in these public water systems, and Sydney will go into that a little bit further. We've also looked at fish consumption. As I mentioned, we've done some cyanotoxin analysis of the fish, and we found that the standard that was set, or the action level that was set by the state, was based on one fish meal a week. So if you're looking at subsistence level, then these fish are even more exceeding of health protection levels for consumption. But we looked at tissue and liver samples of a number of fish from multiple years, multiple seasons that they were caught, and multiple arms of the lake, or all three arms of the lake. And you can see this data in Seedon as well as on Tribe's website. And it's we just got another big round of fish tissue in. Here's an example of the no evidence of bloom, but you have caution toxin levels. You can see Corolla's boot right there through the water. She took that picture, but there was almost warning levels of cyanotoxins in this sample. And then here's sulfurate mercury mine. At this sampling event, it was below caution level, but it looks like, like you want to avoid it. So toxins can be present with no obvious bloom. So we have been doing a large amount of education about water quality conditions. We have a Facebook page called Clear Lake Water Quality, which I always encourage people to, post your pictures on there, communicate with us, ask us questions, and we will share our information and be transparent about it. And the tribe also has a website, so bbrancheria.com, Clear Lake Cyanotoxins. And just to, oops, what did just went straight to it. I didn't really mean to do that. Sorry. And I might need help in chat. I don't know how to switch this back. Apologies. So go to the website if you get a chance. And it's very interactive. There's actually quite a bit of information on the website. No, I don't think they have. Oh, okay. Okay. Make sure that's so. Yeah, okay. Thank you. And, we tend to I was really happy when we finally had enough followers on the Clear Lake Water Quality page that we actually had more than the local donut shop. And now we're more than that now. So I feel really proud that, took us a number of years, but I think more people are getting interested in cyanotoxins, and it's just a place to learn more. And I really see that the amount of really good conversation about cyanobacteria and cyanotoxins, I really just feel that it's elevated. The level of discussion is elevated over the years because people they're interested and they want to learn. And I see people correct each other. Don't call it blue-green algae, So great job, everybody, with that. I mentioned that we do benthic cyanobacteria testing in the local creeks. benthic cyanobacteria is something that grows on the bottom. You're not going to see it like a bloom that you see in the lake. It's more like, looks like black fungus or something that is on the bottom, growing on the rocks. As you can imagine, it's holding on real tight because the rivers are rushing. And so it has to hold on tight. It has a completely different look. This is 2022 map of the different locations where we put spat bags, which is collecting dissolved cyanotoxins over a period of time, and also grab samples. We're doing microscopy on it. It has a very different look. Even the cyanobacteria morphology is different. But you can see that there are toxin detects in multiple locations that, depending on whether it's a grab sample or a spat bag, it's not necessarily, there's going to be any warning signs out, but it does show you that in multiple locations around the lake or around the whole county, there are times when you probably should avoid and have your pets avoid creeks. So real briefly, I talked about CalWatch a little bit. I just want to point out that these pictures that you see here are actually from the tap water. This is from the tap water of people's homes after they had their various treatments. So if you have your own pipe into Clear Lake or any water body here, don't have a false sense of security that your system is going to be taking out cyanobacteria. It's very small, and a number of homes actually had toxin levels that were above the EPA health value. So, and this was when the lake had really high toxins, our highest level yet, 160,000 micrograms per liter. But please note that if you are not totally on top of your maintenance, and you have a system that's, really to be able to take out cyanobacteria, it's not even recommended. It's incredibly difficult. And this is why the public water systems that have, $300,000 or $500,000 treatment systems are able to take it out mostly. So people's personal ones are pretty difficult, if not impossible. But because of the toxins that we were seeing in the private drinking water systems, there was a health advisory that the county put out, and it led to a 2-month advisory to not drink water from the lake if you had your own private system. And there were some public water systems that assisted with providing some tap water. And just a little bit about, we were collecting information about what people's treatment was, whether it was chlorination or whether they had ultraviolet disinfection, and people were still having microcystin detects. So, just looking at the different routes of exposure, that drinking water is one of them, fish consumption is one of them, recreation and tribal traditional activities. These are all ways, and that's not even all of them, but those are kind of the majority of ways that people are potentially exposed to it. Because of our ambient water monitoring on Clear Lake, where we're out there every other week for the summer testing for toxins, it really provides this nice backdrop of how do we, go about protecting the uses that we know are being exposed to the lake and to the toxins. Kind of the final thing that we do is that we have been training tribes all over the place, mostly in California, but Region 9 EPA, so California, Arizona, Nevada, to start their own cyanotoxin monitoring program. And we've had 4 trainings so far, and we've got more to go, where we go into basically everything that we've learned. We're just passing it on to them, and doing microscopy analysis for them, and really trying to get everybody up to speed, because you'd be surprised, there's not a lot of water bodies percentage-wise that are monitored in California. There's a lot less than you think, and Clear Lake is probably the most monitored, and it's because of the tribal programs. Just a little teaser, 2024 data, just a little bit. So the left table, the red cells, so each column is its own sampling date. So I'm just showing from January, and it's just showing whatever the highest toxin level was for each sampling event. Oops, I forgot to highlight the cell from there. But it was only, so June 24th, we actually had our highest toxin level on the lake for this year, 16,000. And that was at Lily Cove, which is in the lower arm. And just this last sampling event, July 10th, which is what is on our website right now, though we just got toxin results back from the lab last night. I have not had a chance to put it on our website yet, but we're at 2,261.5. So that's definitely above 0.8. It's above the danger level of 20 as well. But it also, I just want to point out that the bolded cell is the highest result value for that site in 2024. And look at how many sites at the July 10th event had the highest level for that year. So, and then looking at our signage tracker, we start out with not much, most of them are all below that 0.8, but starting in June, and certainly by the end of June this year, we have had a lot of dangers or caution warning in dangers. And the other thing I said, we look at cyanobacteria and do microscopy on it. And we are looking at nitrogen fixers, which are cyanobacteria that have heterocysts or heterocytes that are nitrogen fixers. So they don't have to have nitrogen in the water. They're basically pulling it from the atmosphere. And we tend to see those as non-toxic in the lake in terms of cyanotoxins, because we do a lot of other studies on these cyanobacteria, just not seeing any toxins produced as far as we could tell when we are doing when we see a lot of nitrogen fixers. But you can see that, so the nitrogen fixers are this blue graph. And as the season, it starts off, we see a lot of diatoms and green algae in the beginning of the year, and that switches out. And then we start seeing nitrogen fixing cyanobacteria with microcystis and other cyanobacteria that aren't microcystis or nitrogen fixers. And those start to rise as the nitrogen fixers drop. And that's just because of competition and food availability. It's best when we see nitrogen fixers dominate, in my opinion, after doing this for 10 years. Those seem to be the ones that don't have the toxins, as I mentioned. And finally, I want to mention Alex Miguel, who's not here, but she's our water resources program manager, has been with the tribe for a few years and does the lion's share of the cyanotoxin monitoring, cyanobacteria monitoring. She does an awesome job. We all work together to make sure that we cover each other and the thing that needs to happen. So I just want to thank her as well as the whole Big Valley EPA team. And thank you very much for your attention, and take questions at the end. Thank you.